What if ancient wisdom could speak directly to your life today? Welcome to Torah from Boca, where Rabbi David Baum brings the heart of Jewish tradition to the modern world. Each week, discover powerful lessons from Torah from Boca Raton, one of the fastest-growing Jewish populations in the world. We explore stories of leadership, resilience, and compassion, and help you find meaning for every stage of your journey. Whether you're a lifelong learner or just curious, tune in and let our Torah inspire you. Listen now to Torah from Boca with Rabbi David Baum.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. There was some news this week for those who watched the Golden Globes. The winner for Best Motion Picture was One Battle After Another. Anyone seen that movie yet? One Battle After Another. And I remember thinking as I said it, I said, that's not a movie of what it feels like to be a Jew in America today. One battle after another. Every week brings something new. Unexpected, just like we heard from Rachel. It's like the sea. Another headline, another reminder that Jewish history did not end in 1948. It just keeps showing up in different ways. This past week in Mississippi, a 19-year-old anti-Semite set fire to Beth Israel congregation, the oldest synagogue in the state. He reportedly called it the synagogue of Satan. And he tried to erase more than a building. He tried to burn down over 100 years of Jewish life, memory, and presence in that state. Yesterday, just yesterday, about 2 miles from here, a West Boca Jewish doctor's office was defaced with swastikas. And of course, it's not just Jews. As Jews, we care about others, especially the vulnerable. We see what's happening in our country. We see what's happening in Minnesota. And so we knew, and we know that we too were strangers. And so we feel that pain. And when we read this week's parashah, the part we didn't read, we read about the promises of plagues, but we actually see them, the plagues. One plague after another. 7 plagues in this week's parsha. The question that Torah forces us to ask is not only what happens to Egypt, but what happens to Pharaoh during this process. In our reading, in chapter 7, which we read today, verse 3, God tells Moses, Vani ekshed lev paro, vehir beiti et ototai vet muftai beretz Mitzrayim. I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and that I may multiply my signs and marvels in the land of Egypt. So at first glance, it does not seem fair. God is giving these plagues, and then God says, I'm going to give them more plagues. I'm going to make Pharaoh's heart hardened so that they keep on going. Rashi, though, adds a caveat here, a crucial detail. Because even though God says, I'm going to harden his heart during the first 5 plagues, that's not what happens. It says in the first 5 plagues that Pharaoh hardened his own heart. In other words, he says Pharaoh's loss of moral freedom does not come first. It comes after repeated choices to ignore suffering, to refuse responsibility, and to turn away from the possibility that he could change. Pharaoh becomes hardened by the battles, by the plagues. And it makes sense. Who doesn't admire someone? What do we say when someone who's been through it? We say they're battle hardened. That's not an insult. That is a compliment. But there's a difference between perseverance for a just cause and moral blindness for an unjust cause. The person who endures a just struggle will ultimately be looked at as a hero. The person who keeps fighting for injustice will always be remembered as the villain. And the Torah teaches us that plagues can multiply if we allow them. But Judaism offers a different response to living through a time of plague, through living through one battle after another. Pirkei Avot, the ethics of our fathers, teaches something very interesting. They say, Aveira goreret Aveira. They said one sin causes another. But mitzvah goreret mitzvah. One mitzvah creates another. In other words, we live in a world of chain reactions, and we have to choose which one we want to start. And I want to share with a very short, small human story. Like many of you, I get sick too. I get the flu just like you, maybe from you, who knows? And that was this past week, and I called the office because I had to cancel meetings, and people sent me best wishes. They said, what can we do for you? I said, please, no fuss. I don't want anything. But there was one response that said, no, we have to bring you food. And I said, okay. They were very persistent. And I said, why? And she said she shared a letter from her son who is around my age, a little bit younger, and has been serving in the Israeli military, the IDF and reserves for the past 2 years, along with men his own age. And here's a letter that he sent to them. Dear family, today we gathered in the military cemetery of Karnei Shomron for the second yortzeit of Amichai Yisrael Yehoshua Oster, son of Marcy and Howard, who fell in battle defending our nation and people. I had the privilege of knowing Amichai and serving alongside him. We are to this day brothers in arms. This Shabbat, please do a mitzvah, anything you choose, and do it in his memory, and let his neshama have an aliyah. The family of the fallen soldier wanted everyone to know that you should honor a soul, not just by remembering him, but by acting. By feeding someone, by showing up, by adding blessing to the world when there is plague and destruction. And in that moment, I realized something about myself. I need to be better at receiving blessings and taking what people have to offer. Because this family's act wasn't really about me. It was about keeping a chain of mitzvot, of sacred obligations alive, and my role was simply to receive it and not break it. And so what's our response in a world where it feels like one battle after another, one plague after another, where hatred still burns, tries to burn what it does not understand? And so what's our response? At the very least, we could be more Jewish. We could be more intentional about this idea of mitzvah, of commandment, of sacred obligation. More committed to showing up for one another. More determined to respond to destruction, not just with outrage, but with action. Because every mitzvah that we do pushes back against the darkness of plague. Every act of goodness redeems something fractured and broken. And sometimes, in a world of battles, the most powerful thing we can do is to choose what we do next. May the mitzvot, the sacred obligations that we hold so sacred to us, it's our identity, may they ripple outward, and may they bring light where there has been darkness, and life where there has been loss. And let us say, Amen.
If you found inspiration in today's episode of Torah from Boca, please visit Rabbi David Baum at Congregation Sha'arei Kodesh in Boca Raton. Discover more of his teachings and community work by visiting rabbidavidbaum.com. Subscribe, share, and join us again as we connect ancient wisdom to the challenges of today. Thank you for listening.